I was 25, living alone for the first time, trying to prove I could make it on my own, and I rented this little cabin in the countryside, a place called Pine Hollow, about 2 hours from the city, surrounded by wheat fields and these quiet, rolling hills that seemed to go on forever. It was cheap, a steal really. This weathered wooden place with a tin roof and a porch that sagged like it was tired, but I loved it. You know, the solitude, the way the stars looked at night. So bright, it felt like they were watching me. I was working remotely, some data entry gig, nothing fancy, and I thought, this is it. This is my fresh start. No roommates, no drama, just me and the open sky. But then, I don't know, maybe a week in, I started noticing things. Small things at first, the kind of things you tell yourself are nothing, but they stack up, don't they? Like pebbles in a pile, until you can't ignore the weight. It started with the mailbox, this rusty metal thing at the end of the dirt driveway, about 100 yards from the cabin. I'd check it every couple of days, mostly junk mail, but one morning there was a letter, no stamp, no address, just my name, Hannah, scrawled in black ink, the kind of handwriting that looks like it was written in a hurry, all sharp angles and smudges. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and it said, "Welcome to Pine Hollow. I'm glad you're here. Hope you stay a while." No signature, nothing else. Just that. And I thought, okay, maybe a neighbor, someone being friendly, but it didn't feel friendly. It felt personal, too personal. Like they knew me. Or wanted to. I looked around, the fields stretching out, the road empty, and I felt this prickle on my neck, like someone was out there, just beyond the wheat, watching. I shoved the letter in my pocket, but when I got back to the cabin, I locked the door, checked the windows, because that's what you do when your gut starts whispering, right? The letters kept coming, not every day, but often enough, maybe twice a week, always the same, no stamp, my name in that jagged handwriting. And the messages, they got weirder. Things like, "Saw you on the porch last night. You looked happy," or "The blue shirt suits you. Keep wearing it." My stomach dropped reading that one, because I had worn a blue flannel the day before, sitting outside with my coffee, and I hadn't seen anyone, not a car, not a person, just the fields and the hills. I started wondering, who was this? How were they seeing me? Were they hiding out there in the wheat with binoculars? Or worse, closer, somewhere I couldn't see? I called the landlord, an old guy named Roy who lived in town, and asked if anyone else had access to the property, or if he'd told anyone I was here. He said no, just me. The cabin's been empty for years, but he'd check around, and I could tell he thought I was overreacting, a city girl spooked by the quiet. I didn't tell him about the letters. I don't know why. Maybe because I was embarrassed, or maybe because I didn't want to admit how scared I was getting. I started being careful, keeping the curtains drawn, only going out when I had to, and I bought a cheap security camera, one of those battery-powered ones you stick on the porch. It caught nothing at first, just deer, the occasional raccoon, but then, one night, I got a notification, motion detected, and when I checked the footage, there was a man, tall, skinny, wearing a dark jacket, and a baseball cap pulled low, standing at the edge of the driveway, just staring at the cabin. He didn't move, didn't come closer, just stood there for maybe 10 seconds, then turned and walked off into the dark, like he knew exactly where he was going. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone, and I watched the clip over and over, trying to see his face, but the cap hid it, and the camera wasn't good enough to catch details. I called the sheriff's office the next morning, told them about the letters, the video, and they sent a deputy out, a guy named Carter, who looked at the footage, read the letters, and said, "Probably just a prank, kids from town, but he'd patrol the area, keep an eye out." He gave me his card, told me to call if anything else happened, but I could tell he wasn't worried, not really, and that made me feel worse, like I was alone in this. The letters didn't stop. They got longer, more specific. Things like, "You shouldn't leave your coffee mug on the counter. It's not safe." Or, "I heard you singing in the shower. You've got a nice voice." I stopped singing, stopped leaving anything out, started checking every corner of the cabin, under the bed, in the closets, because I was paranoid now, wondering if he'd been inside, if he was still coming in, somehow, when I wasn't home. I changed the locks, got a deadbolt, but it didn't help, because one night I came back from the grocery store, and there was a new letter, not in the mailbox, but on the kitchen table. Right there, in my house, and it said, "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Hannah. I just want to talk." I dropped the groceries, the milk carton splitting open on the floor, and I ran outside, called Deputy Carter from my car, my voice shaking so bad I could barely get the words out. He came right away, searched the cabin, the property, but found nothing. No footprints, no signs of a break-in, just the letter, and he asked if I had any enemies, anyone who'd want to mess with me, and I said no. I didn't know anyone out here. I didn't know why this was happening. They set up extra patrols, and I stayed with a friend in town for a few days, but I couldn't afford to keep doing that, so I went back. But it was like living in a cage, always looking over my shoulder, always listening for footsteps, for the creak of the porch. The camera caught him again. Same guy, same jacket, but closer this time, right up to the porch, his hand reaching for the doorknob, testing it, before he backed off. I sent the footage to Carter, and he said they'd try to identify him, but it wasn't enough, not yet. And I felt like I was losing my mind, like this guy was playing with me, enjoying it. Then, one night, I woke up in the middle of the night because I heard it. The doorknob rattling, not loud, but deliberate, like someone was trying to be quiet. I grabbed the knife I kept under my pillow, crept to the living room, my phone in my other hand, already dialing 911. The rattling stopped, but I heard footsteps, heavy, circling the cabin. And then a voice, low, muffled through the wall, saying, "Hannah, let me in. I just want to see you." I whispered to the dispatcher, told her someone was trying to break in, and she said, "Stay calm. Deputies are on the way. Lock yourself in the bathroom." I did, sat on the cold tile, the knife in my lap, listening, praying, until I heard sirens, and then shouting, and then nothing. They caught him, a guy named Paul, 32, lived in a trailer a few miles away. Someone I'd never met, never seen, but he knew me, had seen me in town at the gas station and decided I was what? His girlfriend? His obsession? They found a notebook in his trailer, pages of it filled with my name, my schedule, what I wore, what I ate, and pictures, grainy ones, taken from a distance, through the wheat. He'd been watching me for weeks, maybe longer, slipping into the cabin when I was out, leaving those letters, moving things, just to mess with me. The sheriff said I was lucky, that guys like him, they escalate, and I didn't want to know what that meant, but I did. I could feel it, in the way he'd stood outside my door, in the way he'd said my name. They arrested him, charged him with stalking, breaking and entering, and I moved out the next day, left the cabin, the countryside, went back to the city, where there's noise, people, safety, or at least the illusion of it. But I still check my locks every night, and I wonder if he ever gets out, will he find me again? I was 23, just out of college, no job yet, no real plan, and my mom thought it'd be good for me to get away, to clear my head, so she sent me to stay with Aunt C for a few weeks. Out in the middle of nowhere, a place called Willow Creek, about 3 hours from anything that felt like civilization. Aunt C was kind but quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you wonder what she's not saying, and her farmhouse was this creaky, whitewashed thing, sagging under the weight of 100 years, surrounded by fields and a single dirt road that wound through the hills like a snake. I didn't mind it at first, it was peaceful, almost too peaceful. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring because there's nothing to fill it. No traffic, no neighbors, just the hum of crickets and the occasional lowing of cattle in the distance. I'd sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun sink behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and I'd think, this is nice. This is what I needed. A chance to breathe, to figure things out. But then, I don't know, maybe it was the third night, or the fourth, I started to notice things, little things at first, things you could brush off as imagination, but they piled up, like stones in a wall, building something you couldn't ignore. It started with the wind, I think, or what I thought was the wind, because out there, the wind was always moving, rustling through the cornfields, rattling the shutters. But this was different. This wasn't just a breeze, it was a sound, a low, steady hum, like someone chanting far away, so faint you'd miss it if you weren't listening hard. I'd hear it at night, lying in the guest room upstairs, the one with the slanted ceiling and the window that looked out over the fields, and I'd sit up, my heart pounding, straining to make sense of it. Was it the wind? Was it machinery from some distant farm? I'd tell myself it was nothing, just the countryside playing tricks on a city kid like me, but it didn't stop. It got louder. Not loud like a storm, but clearer, like it was coming closer, circling the house. I asked Aunt C about it one morning over breakfast. I said, "Do you ever hear anything at night, like a hum or a chant?" She froze, just for a second, her fork halfway to her mouth, and then she smiled, that tight kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes, and said, "Oh, you're just hearing the land, dear. It talks sometimes, especially at night." I laughed it off, because what else could I do But her words stuck with me. The land talks. What did that even mean? I didn't ask her again. I don't know why. Maybe because I didn't want to sound crazy, or maybe because I was starting to feel it too, the way the land seemed alive. The hum wasn't the only thing, though. There were other signs, things I couldn't explain. I'd go for walks in the afternoons, down the dirt road that led past the cornfields, and into a patch of woods about a mile from the house, a place where the trees grew so thick they blocked out the sun, and the air smelled of damp earth and something sweeter, like rotting fruit. I liked it there at first. It felt like an escape, a place to think. But then I started finding strange things, like circles of stones arranged in perfect patterns, too neat to be random, or bundles of twigs tied with red thread, hanging from branches like ornaments. I thought maybe kids from a nearby farm were playing pranks, but there were no other houses for miles, and the nearest town was a 40-minute drive. One day, I found something worse. A small clearing deep in the woods, where the ground was bare, not a blade of grass, and in the center was a pile of bones. Animal bones, I think. Bleached white and arranged in a spiral, like someone had taken hours to get it just right. My stomach twisted, and I backed away, my sneakers crunching on the leaves. I ran. I didn't stop until I was back at the farmhouse, my lungs burning, and when I told Aunt C about it, she just nodded, like it wasn't news, and said, "Best stay out of the woods, dear. They're not for us." Not for us? What did that mean? I wanted to ask, but her face was so calm, so resigned, like she'd made peace with something I didn't understand. I stopped going to the woods after that, but the feeling followed me, that sense of being watched. It was everywhere now, in the fields, on the porch, even in the house. At night, the hum grew sharper, and sometimes I heard whispers mixed in, not words I could understand, but voices, overlapping, urgent, like they were arguing about something. I'd lie there, the quilt pulled up to my chin, staring at the ceiling, telling myself it was just the house settling, just my imagination. But then I'd hear footsteps, soft, deliberate, pacing outside my window, circling the house. I'd peek through the curtains, my heart hammering, but there was never anyone there, just the fields, silver under the moonlight, and the shadows that seemed to move when I wasn't looking. I started keeping the curtains closed, but it didn't help, because the sounds were inside now, not just outside. Creaks in the hallway, a faint tapping, not like fingers, more like something sharp, like claws, scraping along the walls. I'd check the locks every night, double, triple, but it didn't matter, because whatever it wasn't coming through the door. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know, so I waited until Aunt C was asleep, and I crept downstairs, a flashlight in one hand, a kitchen knife in the other, because I wasn't stupid. I wasn't going to face this unarmed. The hum was louder than ever, vibrating in my chest, and the whispers, they were clear now, not English, not any language I knew, but they sounded angry, desperate. I followed the sound, out the back door, into the fields, the cornstalks towering over me, their leaves brushing my arms like fingers. The air was cold, too cold for summer, and the ground felt wrong, soft, like it was breathing. I don't know how long I walked, but I ended up at the edge of the field, where the land dipped into a hollow, a place I'd never seen before, hidden by the corn. There was a tree there, an old, gnarled thing, its branches twisted like it was in pain, and at its base, a circle of stones, just like the ones in the woods, but bigger, and inside the circle, the ground was black, like it had been burned. The hum was coming from there, I was sure of it, and the whispers, they were louder, chanting now, and I saw something, shadows, not people, but shapes, moving in the circle, flickering like smoke. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move, and then I heard my name, whispered, not from the circle, but from behind me, close, like someone was standing right there. I spun around, the knife raised, but there was nothing, just the corn, and when I turned back, the shadows were gone, the hum was gone, everything was silent, too silent, like the world was holding its breath. I don't remember getting back to the house, but I woke up in my bed, the knife still in my hand, the blade clean, thank God, but my shoes were caked with dirt, and my arms were scratched, like I'd been running through thorns. Aunt C didn't say anything at breakfast, but she looked at me, really looked, and I knew she knew. I left the next day, packed my bags, made some excuse about a job interview, and drove back to the city, the farmhouse shrinking in my rear-view mirror. I never went back, never called Aunt C, never asked what she knew, because I was afraid, not just of what I saw, but of what it meant, what it did to me.